1250 Common Grammatical Errors with Bangla and English Translations, Part 2. সে এত জোরে চিৎকার করলো যে বাচ্চাগুলো কান্না শুরু করলো। He shouted very loudly that the children began to cry. He shouted so loudly that the children began to cry. We do not use very that structure, rather we use so that structure. এটা এত ভালো ফিল্ম ছিল যে আমরা আবার দেখলাম। It was a very good film that we watched it again. It was such a good film that we watched it again. We do not use very that structure, rather we use such a that structure. আমি যখন লন্ডন পৌঁছাবো আমি তোমাকে ফোন করব। I'll telephone you when I will reach London. I will telephone you when I reach London. When we refer to the future in an adverbial clause of time, we normally use the present indefinite tense, not future indefinite tense. তুমি কি চিঠিটা লেখা শেষ করেছো? Have you finished to write the letter? Have you finished writing the letter? Certain verbs takes gerund after them, not infinitive. Most such verbs include admit, avoid, enjoy, finish, give up, keep, mind, remember, imagine, quit, stop, etc. ক্যামেরাটা যখন প্রথম পাই একদম ঠিকঠাক মতো কাজ করছিল। When I first got the camera, it worked perfect. When I first got the camera, it worked perfectly. When we want to say how, we normally use an adverb. Most adverbs ends in ly. Calmly, happily, peacefully, economically. সে বেশ বোকার মতো আচরণ করলো। He behaved rather silly. His behavior was rather silly. Or he behaved in a rather silly way. Or he behaved rather stupidly. When we want to say how, we normally use an adverb. Most adverbs end in ly. Calmly, happily, peacefully, economically. সে কঠোর পরিশ্রম করে। He works hardly. He works hard. Some adverbs have two forms, with ly and without ly. Hardly has a different meaning, almost not. Common adverbs with two forms include late, lately, hard, hardly, last, lastly, easy, easily. আমরা যা আশা করেছিলাম সে তার চেয়ে বেশি দেরিতে পৌঁছালো। He arrived more late than we had expected. He arrived later than we had expected. Most one-syllable adverbs form their comparatives and superlatives with er-est. He works harder than anyone I know. আমার পরিষ্কার মনে হচ্ছিল যে সে দোষী। It seemed clearly to me that he was guilty. It seemed clear to me that he was guilty. To modify a verb, we use an adverb. However, after linking verbs, we use adjectives. He remained silent. She turned pale. To learn all the linking verbs, visit my YouTube channel. আমি শক্ত করে দড়িটা টানলাম। I pulled the string tightly. I pulled the strings tight. If the word that follows an object describes the object, we use an adjective. Compare: she painted the kitchen white. His wife made my wife angry. সে সবসময় দেরি করে আসে. Always he arrives late. He always arrives late. Some adverbs normally go immediately before the main verb. These are called middle position adverbs. The group include almost, already, also, always, barely, even, ever, etc. আমার পরিবারের বাকিরা এখনো ফ্রান্সে আছে. The rest of my family still is in France. The rest of my family is still in France. When the main verb is be and there are no auxiliary verbs, a middle position adverb normally goes immediately after it, not before it. আমার চিঠিগুলো এখনো ভুল ঠিকানায় পাঠানো হচ্ছে. My letters still are being sent to the wrong address. My letters are still being sent to the wrong address. When there is more than one auxiliary verb, the adverb goes immediately after the first one. My family will soon be joining me in London. তোমাকে সাধারণত টিকিটের দাম অগ্রিম দিতে হবে. You have to usually pay for the tickets in advance. You usually have to pay for the tickets in advance. The middle position adverbs normally goes immediately before have to, ought to, used to. দুঃখজনকভাবে সে গতকাল অতিরিক্ত ব্যস্ত থাকায় আমার সাথে দেখা করতে পারল না. He was too busy, unfortunately, to see me yesterday. Incorrect. Unfortunately, he was too busy to see me yesterday. Some adverbials express our attitude to what we are about to say. They normally come at the beginning of the sentence. They include sadly, unfortunately, surprisingly, luckily, of course, etc. সে আমাদের প্রশ্নগুলো যত্ন সহকারে পড়তে বলল. He told us to read carefully the questions. He told us to read the questions carefully. An adverbial doesn't normally come between a verb and its object. আমি জুলাই মাসে কিছুদিনের জন্য প্যারিস ঘুরতে যাচ্ছি. I shall be visiting Paris in July for a few days. I shall be visiting Paris for a few days in July. When there are two more adverbials of time at the end of a sentence, the usual order is duration, how long, frequency, how often, and time, when. আমি কেমব্রিজের কাছে একটা যুব ছাত্রাবাসে থাকছি. I'm staying near Cambridge in a youth hostel. I'm staying in a youth hostel near Cambridge. When there are two adverbials of the same time at the end of a sentence, place plus place, the one which helps to define the other normally goes last. আমি ছোট হয় একা একা রাত করে বাইরে যাওয়ার অনুমতি ছিল না. I was not allowed to go out on my own after dark as a child. As a child, I was not allowed to go out on my own after dark. For reasons of style, we try to avoid the unnecessary long string of adverbials. When one of the adverbials provides a background for the sentence, we normally place it at the beginning. শুধু বিশেষ পরিস্থিতিতে অনুমতি দেওয়া হবে. Only under special circumstances permission will be given. Only under special circumstances will permission be given. Some adverbials have a negative meaning. The group includes barely, hardly, neither, never, nor, only, really, scarcely, seldom, not once, at no time, on no account, under no circumstances. If a clause begins with a negative expression, the word order changes to that of a question. বিড়ালটা বাচ্চা দেওয়ার পরেই শুধু আমরা বুঝতে পারলাম ওটা মেয়ে ছিল. Only when the cat had kitten we realized it was female. Only when the cat had kittens did we realize it was female. Sometimes, mainly in formal styles, we begin an adverbial clause with only plus conjunction. For example, only if, only when, only once. When a sentence begins in this way, the word order in the main clause changes to that of questions. Compare. After she had met him, she knew that she could trust him. Only after she had met him did she know that she could trust him. বৃষ্টি নামলো আর আমরা বাড়িতে ফিরে গেলাম. Down the rain came and we all ran back to the house. Down came the rain and we all ran back to the house. When we place an expression of direction at or near the beginning of a clause, the subject and verb change places. Compare, a white Mercedes came round the corner. Round the corner came a white Mercedes. তৃতীয় পাতার ক্যামেরার জন্য একটা বিজ্ঞাপন ছিল. On page 3 there was an advertisement about a camera. On page 3 there was an advertisement for a camera. We talk about an advertisement for something. আমার প্রধান শিক্ষক কিছু ভালো পরামর্শ দিল. My headmaster gave me a good advice. My headmaster gave me some good advice. Advice is an uncountable noun and is used with an and is not used with an. Fit থাকার জন্য আমি তোমার উপদেশ চাই. I would like your advice for how to keep fit. I would like your advice on how to keep fit. We ask for advice on about how to do something. সে আমাকে আরেকটা চাকরি খোঁজা শুরু করার জন্য উপদেশ দিল. He advised me to start looking for another job. He advised me to start looking for another job. Advice is noun and advice with s is a verb. সে ধূমপানের কিছু ক্ষতিকর প্রভাব বর্ণনা করলো. He describes some of the harmful effects of smoking. He describes some of the harmful effects of smoking. Affect is verb and effect is noun. আজকাল আমরা রেস্টুরেন্টে খাওয়া কুলোতে পারি না. We do not afford to eat in restaurants nowadays. We cannot afford to eat in restaurants nowadays. Afford is usually used with can could. তার বিল পরিশোধ করার সামর্থ্য ছিল না. He couldn't afford paying the bill. He couldn't afford to pay the bill. Afford is followed by an infinitive, not a gerund. আমাদের বেশিরভাগেরই এটা করার সামর্থ্য নেই. This cannot be afforded by most of us. Most of us cannot afford this. Afford is not used in passive form. এই ছোট্ট ছেলেটা হারিয়ে গিয়েছিল আর ভীতস্বরে কথা বলল। The little boy was lost and spoke in an afraid voice. The little boy was lost and spoke in a frightened voice. Afraid is not used before a noun. তাদের অনেকেই চাকরি হারানোর ভয়ে আছে। Many of them are afraid to lose their job. Many of them are afraid of losing their job. If we are afraid to do something, we would like to do that, but we fear what might happen as a result. It was so windy that I was afraid to open the umbrella. If we are afraid of doing something, we do not want to do it or we do not want it. তিন সপ্তাহের মধ্যে আমি ফ্রান্স ফিরে যাচ্ছি। After 3 weeks, I am going back to France. In 3 weeks, I am going back to France. When we mean at the end of, we use in. Can we come back in about 30 minutes? পরবর্তীতে সে আমার সাথে দেখা করতে আসলো আর ক্ষমা চাইলো। He came to see me after and apologized. He came to see me afterwards and apologized. After is not normally used as an adverb. Instead, we use afterwards or later. 60 বছরের উপরে যে কাউকে অবসরে পাঠানো উচিত। Anyone after 60 should be made to retire. Anyone over 60 should be made to retire. When we mention someone's age, we normally use over. বৃষ্টি শেষ হওয়ার পরে আমরা বাড়ি যেতে পারবো। After it will stop raining, we can go out. After it stops raining, we can go out. To refer to the future for adverbial clause of time, we use present indefinite tense after, not future. আমি আবার দোকানটাতে ফিরে গেলাম। I went again back to the shop. I went back to the shop again. The adverb again normally goes at the end of a clause. শেষবার আমাদের দেখা হওয়ার পর 6 মাস হলো। It's 6 months ago since we last saw each other. It is 6 months since we last saw each other. Ago is not used before since. We can say we last saw each other 6 months ago. আমি 10 মিনিট আগে তাকে ক্যান্টিনে দেখেছি। I've seen her in the canteen about 10 minutes ago. I saw her in the canteen about 10 minutes ago. With ago phrase, we use the past tense, not the present tense. সে আরো 1 সপ্তাহ অপেক্ষা করতে রাজি হলো। He agreed waiting for 1 more week. He agreed to wait for 1 more week. Agree is followed by an infinitive, not a gerund. আমি একমত যে অস্ত্রের পেছনে অতিরিক্ত টাকা খরচ করা হয়। I agree that too much money is spent on weapons. I agree that too much money is spent on weapons. Agree is a verb, not an adjective. ছাত্রছাত্রীদেরকে সময় মতো বকেয়া পরিশোধ করতে হবে। A student must pay his or her dues on time. Students must pay their dues on time. The best way to avoid his or her is to change the subject to plural. দেশি প্রধান রপ্তানি পণ্য হলো তেল আর গ্যাস। The country's chief export is oil and gas. The country's chief exports are oil and gas. The subject and the subject complement normally agree in number. পুলিশ ঘটনাটা তদন্ত করে দেখছে। The police is investigating the incident. The police are investigating the incident. Some nouns which look singular police are in fact plural and take a plural verb. পুরনো বন্ধুদের কাছ থেকে কল পাওয়া আমাকে অনেক আনন্দ দেয়। Getting calls from old friends give me a lot of pleasure. Getting calls from old friends gives me a lot of pleasure. When the subject is an ing clause, getting calls from old friends, or a to clause, to see her again after so many years, the following verb is singular. কারাগারে 10 বছর কাটানো অনেক লম্বা সময়। 10 years are a long time to spend in prison. 10 years is a long time to spend in prison. When the subject is period of time, an amount, a distance, a speed, etc., the verb is singular. মিটিংয়ের সময় কারো ঢোকার অনুমতি নেই। Nobody are allowed during the meeting. Nobody is allowed during the meeting. The following pronouns are considered singular: any, another, anybody, anyone, anything, everybody, everyone, everything, nobody, no one, nothing, somebody, something, someone, etc. টাকাটা 3 ভাগের 2 ভাগ চুরি হয়ে গিয়েছিল। 2/3 of the money were stolen. 2/3 of the money was stolen. When the subject consists of all, a lot, of, any, more, most, some, fraction or percentage plus noun, the verb agrees with the noun. Most or 3/4 of the letter was about her holiday. Most or 3/4 of the books are in the library. দুই সরকারের কেউই কোনো সুযোগ দিতে রাজি নয়। Neither of the governments are willing to give away. Neither of the governments is still willing to give away. Each, every, either, neither normally take a singular verb. অ্যাঞ্জেলার কতগুলো বাচ্চা আছে? How many children do Angela have? How many children does Angela have? Here, children is not the subject, Angela is the subject. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe.